Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. It is almost New Year's Eve. It is the day before. And December 30th, 2018, we're going to struggle come Wednesday to remember to put 2019 on everything. But so far, we're okay. And so far, I haven't made any mistakes. But the night is young. I welcome you to the Bible Forum. We've got a lot of things to talk about. We always do. This was a week when I really didn't think I was going to have enough to fill the hour, let alone 2 hours. And then before the end of the week, it all just kind of came together. Seems that around Christmas, New Year's time, there's not a lot of news. Excuse me. There's news about Trump, about the wall, and that sort of thing. But there's not a lot of other kinds of news, but it worked out pretty good, and I think we've got a full show, so we're going to get started. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and there are a lot of different ways that people celebrate New Year's Eve. I found a list this week of different countries and the sorts of things that they do. Some of them very strange. For example, Brazilians claim that jumping over one wave each time you make a New Year's wish for a total of 7 waves will increase your good luck and your wishes will come true. Besides, wave jumping, another popular tradition for Brazilians is wearing a primarily white outfit for luck. Maybe it's my mind. Maybe I have a dirty mind. But can you imagine who created this tradition? Somebody who liked to see women running out into the water in a white dress? Yeah. Cynical, perhaps. Over in Denmark, it's a tradition to smash plates on your neighbor's house as a sign of affection. Picture that, if you will. Most of the evening, people walking by throwing plates at your house and breaking them. They're thrown after midnight, so you're not going to get any sleep. And whoever has the largest pile in the morning is said to have the most loyal friends. Besides, it's good luck. In Mexico, locals will toss a glass of water out their window to signify fewer tears in the future, as well as a year of good travels and no tears. In South Africa, locals throw their unwanted furniture and appliances out of your window and onto the street. Locals say that this brings them a fresh start in the new year. The tradition's a little dangerous because even refrigerators are thrown out of windows. But they say the tradition has calmed down just a little bit. I try to imagine if you're on the 3rd floor and people are walking by, but I guess maybe that's not it. In Ecuador, people burn scarecrows or effigies to dispel any bad vibes from the past year. Very superstitious. Sometimes they're dressed to resemble people they dislike. They may be burned as a symbol of forgiving and forgetting. In the Philippines, circular objects are thought to be sacred and to bring good fortune. So coins in the pocket, polka-dotted clothes, round foods like grapes and oranges are all examples of things that you'll find in every household during the holiday. In Scotland, Hogmanay is a traditional celebration that incorporates fire into festivities. Larger cities like Edinburgh have torchlight processions where locals march together in the streets to bring in the new year. However, the real thrill happens at midnight in the city of Stonehaven. Here, Scots dressed in kilts wave poles with fireballs around while they parade through the streets filled with spectators. They use the fire as a means to purify the new year. The spectacle ends in the scenic town center near the harbor when they toss their fire sticks into the sea. In Colombia, wearing red or yellow undergarments on New Year's Eve can increase your chances of finding love or luck in the new year. Yellow is by far the most popular color choice. And if you forget yours, don't worry. They even sell them on the streets before the holiday. We're going to talk a little bit more later in the show about holiday celebrations and the kinds of things that people believe and go on. But these are some of the things that happen around the world. You find a little bit of strange, superstitious, which is largely everybody's celebration of New Year's Eve. I ran across a list this week of questions from viewers. I don't get a lot of questions. I haven't had any questions for quite some time. But there have been, over the years, people who have written in, called, texted, whatever, with a question, something they'd like to have discussed. It forces me to decide what you want to hear, or what you need to know if you don't tell me. But over the years, some common topics have popped up. More and more conservative churches are teaching that it's only a sin if you get drunk, for example. So what does the Bible teach about that? That was a question a couple of years ago. They also tell us that it's only taking the Lord's name in vain that is a Bible sin. You can talk all the ugly trash talk you want, use all the vulgarities you can think of, as long as you don't use the Lord's name. And of course, didn't Jesus imply that swearing was okay? Check it out, Matthew chapter 23. That David danced, therefore dancing is not evil. And of course, it is not inherently evil. We're questioning whether divorce is worse than a destructive marriage. Didn't Jesus make fornication an exception? Matthew 19. And doesn't the Old Testament law protect divorced women? Deuteronomy 24. And what about cremation? That question has almost gone away as more and more people opt for this cheaper means of honoring their departed loved ones. Think of that. I want to honor my departed loved one, so I will have them burnt to ashes. And we can spread the ashes wherever we want. Does that make sense to anybody? Then there's the perennial, is the present day Israel the Israel of God? And of course it is not. And what's the difference between the day of the Lord and the day of God? Also, 2 Peter chapter 3, the day of judgment. What's the difference in these things? What about Ouija boards and yoga, even as an exercise? That was a very popular question several years ago. And if you have time, is the way it's usually worded, exactly when will the world end? Well, it's not going to end based on my determination. It's going to end when the God in heaven decides. I happen to think it's close. Of course, everybody that I've ever known in the whole 75 years of my life was saying that. I don't remember it so much in the 50s, but after that, when the culture started to going south, people started asking that question a lot. Do you have questions? Email me at thebibleforum@gmail.com. I would much rather answer your questions than try to find things I think you might be interested in, or things that would educate or enlighten. Are you keeping tabs on the wall? We don't even have to describe what wall anymore, do we? I learned that as of December 24th, I have no new information since then, over $17.5 million have been donated by citizens to pay for the border wall. There's apparently a GoFundMe page. Isn't that interesting? Another question is the stock market in free fall? You listen to all of the pundits and the experts, and they line up on both sides. But the stock market probably is not in a free fall. It's probably not even in danger. The Financial Stability Oversight Council, which is a watchdog group created after the 2008 financial crisis, that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin chairs, met last week, and regulators did not express particular concern over the markets or bank liquidity. They also startled financial analysts, bankers, and economists just last Sunday by issuing an unusual statement declaring that the nation's 6 largest banks had ample credit to extend to American businesses and households. All this while the president criticized the Fed, calling the central bank the only problem our economy has, and likening it and its policies to a golfer who can't putt. In Essex, Maryland, a volunteer fire company had their truck egged over Christmas as they transported Santa Claus through the community. On Facebook, the company said it spent the last 9 days driving Santa around because the volunteers enjoy seeing the children's faces light up when they see Santa, and they're keeping a long tradition alive. But when the truck visited Cedar Valley Place last Sunday night, residents or someone began throwing eggs at Santa. So the fire company is reevaluating whether or not to have Santa Claus on the fire truck next year. I say avoid that neighborhood. Keep Santa. We learned this week that an American judge has ruled that Kim Jong-un's North Korean regime must pay $501 million to the parents of Otto Warmbier after their son died following his time in captivity over there. Lots of luck. Against a white void, an assemblage of robots as small as ball bearings with LED lights on them aligns themselves in a block. After a human tears a swath through their assembled clusters, the robots organically, intuitively, autonomously begin to communicate with one another by means of infrared signals and quickly reform into that same shape, guided by nothing so much as its own basic rules. The experiment by a team of researchers in Spain, the UK, and the Netherlands posits a simple question. Robotic swarms scan as intense, complex things, but what if people can engineer them to work together as autonomous cells in organic matter? There's no end. The Bible talks about the end of days when knowledge shall increase, and we're watching it on steroids. Here's an article I entitled, "You Thought I Was Exaggerating." You know, a lot of times people write to me and they'll say, "Yeah, you're just going great. I'm not exaggerating." From Madrid, we learned this week a spokesman for the Diocese of Cadiz and Ceuta reported that a Colombian man who pretended to be a Catholic priest did that for 18 years, hearing confessions, celebrating weddings, and all the rest of it, isn't. They have declared that the marriages and the baptisms carried out by Miguel I can't say it the Spanish way, Angel Ibarra, remain valid. However, confessions are not, even though the grace of God acted on the faithful who were deceived. What does that mean? They confess their sins to the priest. He tells them what to do to mollify, to do away with those sins. 5 Hail Marys, 3 Our Fathers, I don't know, flagellation. It could be anything. And in their mind, you know, God has forgiven their sins. Now the church comes around and says, no. His confessions were not valid. But the grace of God acted on the faithful who were deceived. God isn't punishing them because they didn't know any better. I still don't know what that means. theologically. But then I don't understand confessing my sin to a human being either, as if that's the same as confessing it before God. Brazil's state police say they have found a suitcase full of cash and emeralds, along with handguns, which apparently are forbidden by law in Brazil. All of these were hidden in the home of a faith healer accused of sexual abuse by hundreds of women. The suitcase was discovered on Friday in a basement accessed by a trap door in a closet. Police in the central state of Goiás said they also found about $300,000 worth of Brazilian reals. They had yet to appraise the emeralds. De Faria has worked for several decades in rural Brazil as a healer who claimed he could cure diseases. A local TV station aired accounts from December 7th from several alleged victims, the number stands at about 600 so far, who said they had been sexually abused for years. The man ran a faith hospital. Now this is just off the chart awful. But what is so different, other than the sexual abuse at this level and all some of the other things, what is so different than the average charismatic in America? They claim they can heal people of diseases. Fire on you! Fall down. Slain in the spirit. They got all kinds of stuff. And they got a lot of money. They don't run a hospital. They call it a church. Under the heading of Who Knew, out of New York City, a San Francisco physician said he's seeing a rise in the injury known as selfie wrist. Dr. Levi Harrison explained that the condition is caused by hyperflexing your wrist inwards in order to capture the perfect selfie angle. You see that? Other medical professionals believe it's caused by holding devices too long in one position without moving. Either way, selfie wrist can reportedly cause numbness and a tingling sensation that people feel in their fingers and their wrists. Nerve endings, blood vessels, people. Hands are not supposed to be doing this. A new club has just completed its inaugural semester at North Carolina State University, welcoming students interested in, well, Satanism. The club calls itself Satanic Students at North Carolina State, and its leaders say they promote humanism and are working to build up the fledgling group at the Raleigh-based public university. The Satanic Club promotes humanism. Who would have thunk it? This semester, the group has held public meetings to attract and to gain interest. According to its Get Involved website, the mission of Satanic Students at North Carolina State University is to, 1, encourage benevolence and empathy among all people. 2, reject tyrannical authority. I would probably venture to guess that that means all authority. Thirdly, advocate scientific examination of the universe and our place in it. Fourthly, promote morality and justice based on rational, humanistic values. No longer is there any objective moral standard. Nope. Right is not right anymore as a totally objective standard. It has a little flex to it. Humanistic values. And lastly, be directed by the human conscience to undertake noble pursuits guided by the individual will. A conscience that may very well be seared to undertake whatever noble pursuits, whatever the word noble means to them, guided only by the individual will, which the Bible declares to be evil, unable to understand reality as God sees it. Everything here, completely human, completely materialistic, completely dedicated to the human will. That's Satanism. But that, my friends, is the average human being in this country under the age of 30. We learned this week, following the 2019 elections in Canada, that Canada is expected to approve euthanasia for sick children. They're joining the Netherlands and Belgium as the only nations in the world to affirm the sanctioning of such practices. The Council of Canadian Academies is making it available for children with mental illness and so-called advance requests made by those who wish to set things up should they become incompetent, unable to make a decision later on. Dr. Kulvinder Gill, a pediatrician who is president of Concerned Ontario Doctors, says the country has crossed the threshold at which there isn't any difference between allowing a patient a natural death and taking an action to cause a death. Inquiring minds want to know just what threshold is that. Dr. Gill says, quote, so that in itself this fundamentally attacks the very premise of medicine. What is the first principle of medicine? Do no harm. He says frontline practicing doctors are, for the most part, kept in the dark about the political issue, the policy decisions, and the practice of euthanasia. All this and more happened in this world, on this planet, just in the last week or so. And we didn't hear anything about most of it. All these things percolate until they reach critical mass, and then they are sprung into the news or onto the TV, and we see them for what they are, and by that time, they're ingrained. That's the world at the end of the age.